The security camera inside Kensington Palace captured something no one expected. Princess Charlotte, just 8 years old, stepped directly in front of a royal guard during a formal procession. Her small hand shot up. Her face was calm but serious. The guard froze mid-step. Within minutes, the footage was flagged. Palace officials reviewed it behind closed doors. What they saw made them act immediately. But the public never learned what really happened that day. The royal family's response was kept completely silent. This is the story of a little girl, a loyal guard in a moment that revealed something much deeper than protocol. Before we continue, if you love real emotional stories that touch the heart, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this. It was a Thursday morning in late autumn. The grand corridor inside Kensington Palace was lined with portraits of ancestors and tapestries older than most nations. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, casting golden rectangles on the polished marble floor. Everything smelled of lavender polish and old wood. Princess Charlotte walked beside her governess, Miss Allison. They were on their way to a private family breakfast. Charlotte wore a navy cardigan over her school uniform. Her hair was tied back neatly with a ribbon. She looked like any other child heading to class, but her eyes were sharp, observant. Ahead of them, the changing of the guard ceremony was taking place indoors. It was a rare sight. Only palace staff and family usually witnessed it. 4 guards in red tunics and black bearskins stood at attention. Their boots clicked in perfect rhythm on the stone floor. Their faces were blank, trained to show nothing. One guard, Lance Corporal James Hendricks, stood nearest to the corridor Charlotte was walking through. He had served the crown for 11 years. His posture was flawless, his breathing steady. He had done this routine hundreds of times, but today was different. As Charlotte approached, she suddenly stopped walking. Miss Allison nearly bumped into her. The governess whispered, "Your Highness, we mustn't delay." Charlotte didn't move. Her eyes were locked on something across the hall, a side door barely visible behind a marble column. It was cracked open, just slightly, enough for a shadow to slip through. The guard hadn't noticed. He was focused forward, as trained. But Charlotte had seen it. Someone was inside the palace who shouldn't be there. Her heart began to beat faster. She looked at the guard, then back at the door. The shadow moved again. Without thinking, Charlotte stepped directly into the guard's path. She raised her hand, palm out, the way she'd seen her father do when stopping traffic during charity events. Lance Corporal Hendricks' eyes flickered down. For a split second, confusion broke his discipline. A child. A royal child. Standing in front of him, blocking him, he couldn't speak. He couldn't break formation, but his body tensed. His jaw tightened. His fingers curled slightly at his sides. Charlotte whispered, just loud enough for him to hear, "Someone's in there." Her voice was calm. Too calm for a child? She pointed barely toward the side door. The guard's eyes shifted. He saw it. The door. The shadow. His training kicked in like a switch. His hand moved toward the silent alarm on his belt, but he didn't press it yet. He couldn't be sure. Protocol demanded confirmation. Charlotte stepped closer. She looked up at him, her face pale but determined. "I saw a man. He doesn't belong here." The air in the corridor seemed to thicken. Miss Allison finally noticed something was wrong. She reached for Charlotte's shoulder. "Your Highness, please. We must." Then they all heard it. A soft metallic click, like a latch being undone, or a lock being picked. The guard's entire body shifted. His hand pressed the alarm. A silent pulse went out to every security station in the palace. Within seconds, backup would arrive. But seconds could be too long. Charlotte didn't move. She stood between the guard and the door, her small frame somehow commanding the space. She wasn't afraid. She was focused. The shadow behind the door moved again. Faster this time. Bolder. And that's when the guard made a decision that would change everything. Lance. Corporal Hendricks broke protocol. He stepped out of formation, moving in front of Charlotte, shielding her with his body. His hand went to his ceremonial sword. It wasn't sharp, but it was heavy. And in the right hands, it was enough. Miss Allison gasped. She pulled Charlotte back, but the girl resisted. Her eyes stayed on the door. Hey, behind me, the guard said quietly. His voice was firm, but not unkind. Charlotte nodded. For the first time, her composure cracked, just slightly. Her fingers gripped the edge of Miss Allison's sleeve. The door swung open. A man stepped out. He wore a maintenance uniform, the kind palace staff used when repairing old fixtures or cleaning ventilation shafts. He carried a toolbox. He looked ordinary, unremarkable, but his eyes gave him away. They darted, nervous, guilty. The guard didn't move. He stood like a wall. His voice cut through the silence. Identify yourself. The man smiled. It was a weak smile, the kind people use when caught doing something wrong. Just finishing up some work. Didn't mean to startle anyone. Your clearance badge, the guard said. Show it. The man hesitated. His hand went to his chest, where a badge should have been clipped. It wasn't there. That hesitation was all the guard needed. He stepped forward, his sword still at his side, but ready. You need to come with me now. The man's smile vanished. His hand dropped to the toolbox. He flipped it open. Inside, there was no tools. Just a camera, a small recording device, and something else. A stack of photographs. Royal photographs. Private ones. Charlotte's breath caught. She understood immediately. This wasn't a threat of violence. This was something worse. An invasion. A betrayal. The man grabbed the camera and bolted. He ran toward the far end of the corridor, his footsteps echoing wildly off the marble. The guard didn't chase him. He stayed in front of Charlotte, his body still a shield, but other guards appeared. They came from both ends of the hallway, moving fast and silent. Within seconds, the man was cornered. He dropped the camera, raised his hands. It was over. Charlotte stood frozen, watching. Her face was unreadable, but her hands were shaking. Miss Allison knelt beside her. It's all right now, Your Highness. You're safe. Charlotte nodded slowly, but she didn't look at Miss Allison. She looked at the guard, at Lance Corporal Hendricks, who had broken every rule to protect her. He turned back toward her. Their eyes met. He gave her the smallest nod, a silent acknowledgement. She had seen the danger. She had acted, and together they had stopped something terrible. Palace security escorted the man away. His camera was confiscated. His toolbox searched. Inside, they found files, documents, photos of the royal children in private moments, playing in gardens, eating breakfast, sleeping. It was a tabloid journalist. He had bribed a maintenance worker to swap uniforms. He had been inside the palace for hours, taking pictures, recording layouts, gathering material to sell to the highest bidder. If Charlotte hadn't noticed. If she hadn't stopped that guard, the photos would have been published. The children's privacy shattered, their safety compromised. But none of this was ever reported. The palace suppressed the story immediately. The journalist was arrested quietly. The footage of Charlotte blocking the guard was locked away. The public never saw it. Why? Because revealing what happened would mean admitting the breach. It would mean showing how close danger had come. And it would mean putting a spotlight on an 8-year-old girl who had, in that moment, acted more like a protector than a princess. The royal family made a choice. Silence was safer. Silence was control. But inside the palace, things changed. Later that evening, Charlotte sat in her family's private sitting room. The fireplace crackled softly. Her younger brother Louis played with toy soldiers on the rug. Her older brother George read a book in the corner. Her mother, the Princess of Wales, sat beside her on the sofa. Catherine didn't say anything at first. She just held Charlotte's hand. Her thumb traced slow circles on her daughter's palm. A quiet reassurance. You were very brave today, Catherine finally said. Charlotte looked down. I was scared. I know, her mother replied. But you didn't let fear stop you. That's what bravery is. Charlotte's lip trembled. I didn't know what else to do. I saw him, and I knew something was wrong. Catherine pulled her daughter close. You trusted your instincts, and you've protected this family. That's more than most adults would do. Charlotte buried her face in her mother's shoulder. The weight of the day finally broke through. Tears came quietly without sound. Catherine held her, rocking gently, letting her daughter release what she'd been holding in. Across the room, Prince William stood by the window, staring out at the darkening sky. His jaw was tight. His hands clasped behind his back. He had been briefed by security within the hour. He knew every detail, and it shook him. His children were supposed to be safe, protected, untouchable. But today proved how fragile that safety really was. He turned toward Charlotte. His face softened. He crossed the room and knelt beside the sofa, eye level with his daughter. Charlotte, he said gently, what you did today, I'm so proud of you. She wiped her eyes. I didn't do anything special. Yes, you did, William said firmly. You saw something wrong. You acted. You didn't freeze. You didn't ignore it. You stood up. That takes courage. Charlotte sniffled. The guard helped me. He believed me. William nodded. He did. And we're going to make sure he's recognized for that. But even as he said it, William knew the truth. There would be no public ceremony. No medal presented in front of cameras. The guard would be commended privately, quietly, just like everything else, because the palace had decided. This story would never leave these walls. Later that night, the children were asleep. William and Catherine sat alone in the study. The fire had died down to embers. The room smelled of leather and old paper. They want to bury it, William said. His voice was low, edged with frustration. Completely. No internal memo. No staff briefing. Nothing. Catherine set down her tea. Why? Because admitting it happened means admitting we were vulnerable. It means the press will ask how he got in, how long he was there, what else he saw. William ran a hand through his hair. They think silence protects us. But it doesn't protect Charlotte, Catherine said quietly. She deserves to know her actions mattered. They do matter, William replied. To us, to this family, but to the institution. She's 8. They don't want her to be seen as a hero. They want her to be seen as a child. Catherine's eyes flashed. She is a child who did something extraordinary. William didn't argue. He couldn't, because she was right. The palace had always operated this way. Control the narrative. Manage the message. Protect the image. But sometimes, in protecting the image, they erased the truth. And the truth was this. Princess Charlotte had stopped a security breach. She had noticed what trained professionals missed. She had acted with clarity and courage, and the world would never know. The next morning, Charlotte returned to her normal routine. Breakfast at 7:30. Lessons at 8. Playtime in the garden at 10. Everything the same, except it wasn't. She walked differently now. Her eyes scanned rooms before entering. She noticed exits. She watched faces. Something inside her had shifted. She had seen danger up close, and she couldn't unsee it, Miss Allison noticed. During a history lesson, Charlotte stared out the window, distracted. Her pencil hovered over her notebook, unmoving. Your Highness, Miss Allison prompted gently. Charlotte blinked. Sorry, I was just thinking about yesterday. Charlotte nodded. Miss Allison sat down beside her. It's all right to feel unsettled. What you experienced was frightening. Not scared, Charlotte said quickly. Then, softer, I just keep thinking. What if I hadn't been there? What if no one noticed? Miss Allison didn't have an answer. Because the truth was, Charlotte was right. If she hadn't been there, the man might have left undetected. The photos might have been sold. The damage done, one little girl. One moment of clarity. It had changed everything. But the palace wanted to pretend it never happened. Document for 3 days after the incident. Lance Corporal James Hendricks was summoned to the captain's office. He stood at attention, back straight, hands at his sides. His commanding officer, Captain Rowland, sat behind a heavy oak desk, reviewing a file. The room was silent except for the ticking of an old clock on the wall. Finally, Captain Roland looked up. His face was unreadable. At ease, Hendricks. The guard relaxed slightly, but his eyes remained forward. You broke formation, Roland said. You abandoned your post during a ceremonial duty. You engaged with a potential threat without authorization. You understand how serious that is. Hendricks nodded. Yes, sir. You also prevented a security breach. You protected a member of the royal family. And you acted with sound judgment under pressure. Roland closed the file. The palace has decided not to discipline you. In fact, they're commending you. Privately. Hendricks allowed himself a breath. Relief, but also confusion. Privately, sir. Correct. There will be no public recognition, no ceremony, no statement. As far as the world is concerned, nothing happened that day. Hendricks frowned. But something did happen, sir. I know, Roland replied, and the family knows. That's what matters. Hendricks wanted to argue. He wanted to say that Princess Charlotte deserved credit, that her quick thinking saved the day more than his sword or training ever could. But he stayed silent, because that's what guards do. They protect. They serve. They don't question. You'll be reassigned, Roland continued. Effective immediately. You're being moved to close protection detail. Personal security for the Wales family. Hendricks' eyes widened. Close protection was an honor. It meant trust. It meant the family had specifically requested him. They want you nearby, Roland said, especially near the children. The Princess of Wales personally requested you. Hendricks felt a swell of pride. But also something else. Responsibility. Wait. He had been given a gift, and it came with expectations. I won't let them down, sir, he said. Roland stood, extending his hand. I know you won't. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of Kensington Palace, Princess Charlotte sat with her grandmother. Not the Queen. The other grandmother, Carol Middleton. A woman who had always treated her grandchildren like children first, royals second. They were baking cookies. Flour dusted the countertop. Chocolate chips scattered across a wooden board. Charlotte pressed a star-shaped cutter into dough, her small hands working carefully. Granny, Charlotte said, not looking up. Do you think I did the right thing? Carol paused, setting down her rolling pin. What do you mean, darling? The other day, with the guard. I stopped him. I wasn't supposed to do that, was I? Carol wiped her hands on a towel and knelt beside Charlotte. You saw something wrong, and you acted. That's always the right thing. But it doesn't hurt, Charlotte said. I just want to know it mattered. It did matter, Carol said firmly. You protected your family. You were smart. You were brave. And even if the world doesn't know, the people who love you do. And that's what counts. Charlotte leaned into her grandmother's embrace. She didn't say anything else, but her shoulders relaxed. Just a little. That afternoon, Prince William visited the guardhouse. It was unusual for a royal to make an unscheduled appearance. But William didn't care about protocol today. He needed to do this. He found Lance Corporal Hendricks in the training yard, running drills with other guards. When William approached, the entire squad snapped to attention. At ease, William said. He gestured to Hendricks. Walk with me. They moved away from the others, toward a quieter part of the grounds. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the grass. Birds chirped in the hedges. William stopped, turning to face the guard. I wanted to thank you personally. For what you did, Hendricks straightened. I was just doing my duty, sir, William said firmly. You did more than that. You listened to my daughter. You trusted her instincts. You put her safety above procedure. That's not duty. That's character. Hendricks didn't know what to say. He simply nodded. William continued. My children are growing up in a world that's complicated. Dangerous sometimes. I can't always be there. But I need to know there are people around them who will protect them. Not just because it's their job, but because they care. I do care, sir, Hendricks said quietly. William extended his hand. I know, that's why you're being assigned to us. They shook hands. A simple gesture, but it carried weight. Trust. Respect. As William walked away, Hendrik stood alone in the fading light. He thought about Princess Charlotte, about her small hand raised in warning, her calm voice, her courage. She was just a child. But in that moment, she had been so much more. She was just a child. But in that moment, she had been so much more, and he would spend the rest of his career making sure she never had to be that brave again. Weeks passed. Life at Kensington Palace returned to its careful rhythm. Lessons, meals, public appearances. Everything moved like clockwork. But beneath the surface, things had changed. Princess Charlotte became more observant. She noticed when new staff arrived. She memorized faces. She asked questions, not out of fear, out of awareness. She had learned something most children never do. Safety isn't guaranteed. It's earned, protected, watched over. Her mother noticed. During a walk through the palace gardens, Catherine watched as Charlotte paused near a side gate. The gesture was small, automatic, but it spoke volumes. You don't have to worry, darling, Catherine said gently. The guards check everything. Charlotte looked up at her mother. I know, but it doesn't hurt to check again. Catherine smiled sadly. Her daughter had lost a piece of innocence that day, and there was no getting it back. But there was also something else. A strength. A resilience. Charlotte wasn't fragile. She was grounded. Steady. And that Catherine realized was a gift. Lance Corporal Hendrik settled into his new role quickly. He shadowed the family during outings. He reviewed security routes. He coordinated with other protection officers. But his real job, the one that mattered most, was simple. Watch. Listen. Be ready. One morning, during a private event at Windsor Castle, Charlotte walked past him in the corridor. She stopped, looked up at him, and smiled. Good morning, Mr. Hendricks, she said politely. He nodded. Good morning, Your Highness. She hesitated, then added quietly, Thank you. For that day, he met her eyes. You're welcome. But I should be thanking you. You saw what I didn't. Charlotte's smile widened just a little. Then she continued on her way, her footsteps light on the old stone floor. It was a brief exchange, barely 30 seconds. But it was enough. An understanding. A partnership. A mutual respect that crossed age, rank, and protocol. Behind closed doors, the palace machine continued to operate as it always had. Press officers crafted statements. Event coordinators planned appearances. Advisors debated strategy. And the story of Princess Charlotte and the guard remained locked. Away. Hidden. Controlled. But in the family's private quarters, the story lived on. It was told quietly. Shared among trusted staff. Whispered during late-night conversations. It became legend. Not in the public sense, but in the way family stories do. Passed down. Remembered. Honored. Prince George asked about it once. He had overheard his parents talking. Is it true? Did Charlotte really stop a bad man? William crouched down beside his eldest son. She saw something wrong, and she did something about it. That's what we do in this family. We protect each other. George nodded seriously. I would have been scared. She was scared too, William said. But she didn't let that stop her. That's courage. George thought about that. Then he asked, Will people ever know? William paused. Maybe someday, when she's older, when she can decide for herself if she wants to tell it, just because that was the truth. This was Charlotte's story, not the palace's, not the press's, hers. And when the time was right, if she chose to share it, the world would listen. But until then, it remained what it had always been. A moment, a choice, a quiet act of bravery that changed everything. One evening, months later, the family gathered for dinner. It was informal. Pizza from the kitchen, juice boxers. Laughter. Louis made a mess with his napkin. George told a joke he'd learned at school. Charlotte sat quietly, smiling, soaking in the warmth. Catherine glanced at her daughter. "What are you thinking about, love?" Charlotte shrugged. "Just happy." And she was. Because she had learned something important. Being royal didn't mean being perfect. It didn't mean being fearless. It meant being present, aware, ready to act when it mattered. She was still a child. She still played. She still laughed. She still had bad days and good days. But inside something had shifted. She had been tested. And she had passed. Not because she was a princess, but because she was Charlotte, and that was more than enough. Years from now, when historians look back on this era, they'll write about the big moments. The coronations, the weddings, the speeches, the scandals, but they'll miss the quiet moments. The ones that happen in hallways, in corridors, between a guard and a girl who saw danger and refused to look away. Those moments don't make headlines, but they shape people. Princess Charlotte will grow up. She'll take on more responsibility. She'll represent the crown in 1,000 different ways, and people will wonder where her confidence comes from, her composure, her quiet strength. They won't know about the day she blocked a guard, about the man with the camera, about the choice she made to act instead of freeze, but she'll know, and that's what matters. Lance Corporal Hendricks will continue to serve. He'll protect the family through countless events. He'll retire with honor, and when people ask him about his career, he'll tell stories of ceremonies and tours and long hours on duty. But he'll never tell the one story that mattered most, because it isn't his to tell. Some stories belong to the people who live them, and this one belongs to Charlotte. The palace cameras recorded everything that day. The footage exists, locked in a secure archive, classified, restricted. Someday, maybe decades from now, it might be released. A historian might find it, a documentary might show it, and the world will finally see what happened. They'll watch a little girl step in front of a guard. They'll see her calm face, her steady hand, her quiet courage, and they'll realize something important. Royalty isn't about crowns or titles. It's not about castles or ceremonies. It's about character. It's about doing the right thing when no one's watching, when no one will know, when there's no reward except the knowledge that you acted when it mattered. Princess Charlotte learned that lesson early, earlier than most, and it will define her for the rest of her life. In the years that followed, she carried herself differently. Teachers noticed, staff noticed, family noticed. There was a gravity to her, a seriousness beneath the smiles. She was still a child, still playful, still silly when the moment called for it. But there was steel there too, a backbone, a readiness. Her parents watched her grow with a mix of pride and sadness. Pride because she was strong. Sadness because strength often comes from hardship. And they wished she didn't have to learn that so young. But life doesn't wait, and the world doesn't pause. So Charlotte kept moving forward, one step at a time, one day at a time, carrying the memory of that moment like a compass, a reminder that she could trust herself, that her instincts mattered, that she was capable of more than anyone expected. The guard who risked protocol, the girl who saw what others missed, together they stopped something terrible. Not with violence, not with grand gestures, but with awareness, with trust, with action, and the palace, for all its power and control, couldn't erase that. They could bury the footage. They could silence the story. But they couldn't undo what happened. Because the truth doesn't need an audience. It just needs to exist. And this truth, this moment, existed. Real, powerful, unforgettable. So while the world may never see the cameras inside the palace, while they may never watch Charlotte block that guard, while they may never hear about the royal response that was never shown, the people who mattered know. The family knows. The guard knows. And Charlotte knows. And in the end, that's enough. Because some stories aren't meant for headlines. Some courage doesn't need applause. Some moments are quiet, small, private, but no less powerful, no less important, no less true. And this is one of those stories. The story of a girl who saw danger and refused to turn away. The story of a guard who listened when it mattered most. The story of a moment that changed everything. Even if the world never knows. Even if the cameras never show it. It happened. And it will be remembered. Not by crowds. Not by history books. But by the people who lived it. The people who carry it. The people who know deep in their hearts that on that autumn morning inside Kensington Palace, something extraordinary occurred. And nothing, absolutely nothing, can take that away. If this story touched your heart, if it made you feel something real, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more emotional true stories. And remember, courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a small hand raised in warning. Sometimes it's trusting what you see. Sometimes it's knowing that even when no one's watching, your actions matter. Because they do. They always do. And Charlotte will carry that truth with her for the rest of her life